and it is time for GrokTALK, and we're going to keep talking. GrokTALK is a venture of GraniteGrok.com, New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site, and we are live on audio only today. I do apologize for the video stuff. As we talked about earlier, Gary and I, stuff happens, and I'm living example, being Skip Murphy, that Murphy's Laws are fully existent and alive and well in this day and age of lots of computers. Folks, if you're trying to access the video stream, Ustream.tv has decided that because it's snowing outside, they've turned tail and they are hiding. So I apologize for the lack of the video source this morning. Before the break, Gary, you were sort of enumerating those kinds of things that you think are bankrupting us, and I agree. We are spending 43 cents of money that we don't have, that we have to borrow from other people. But one of the things...
or printing that money.
Or printing it, absolutely.
Yes,
so we are sort of...
So we are creating a situation that is we have created a situation that is unsustainable.
Absolutely. We are doing the Weimar Republic all over again.
We are.
Or, following more recently, Zimbabwe.
Yes, I do have a $100 trillion note in my wallet.
Yeah, that's worth about, what,
when it
was 1/100th of a cent?
When it was printed, it was worth 9 cents, but of course shortly after it was printed, Zimbabwe ceased to issue its currency anymore. It became worthless.
Yeah, and in effect that's what happened. They just kept on printing money to pay off their debts, and everybody at some point said, no, we're not taking the money anymore. And we have seen $1.2 and $1.4 trillion deficits just the last 2 years here in the United States. And the ever-present question is, where's it going to come from? But, you know, we are seeing, along that same vein, people are talking about the debt ceiling. And that has become the big news since the Republicans have taken over the House. My question to you is, would you say, no, we stop government? Or the other theory is, okay, we're going to use this as a fulcrum point to be able to say, we may have to raise that debt ceiling, but we're going to enact an awful lot of spending cuts along what you said, because you gave us a whole litany of things that we're spending money on that we can't afford.
Well, I would play the debt ceiling increase to the edge of brinksmanship. I think that cuts should be demanded by the Republicans, and regardless of where those cuts come in at, they're going to really just be a bite of what needs to be an entire plateful of cuts that need to occur in the future. Again, Skip, I just come back to the fact that I think our national security, I think our way of life is threatened, is immediately threatened by the fact that we continually spend more money than what we take in. You know, looking ahead, if interest rates just go to historical norms, which a lot would argue will never happen again, but if they just do that, interest alone on the debt is going to approach what we're currently spending on defense, which is very, very significant.
Right. I think right now we're spending just about $400 billion a year just on interest. Our military, excluding for the 2 wars that we're now fighting, is generally around $550 billion a year, about the same as what we spend on education.
And I think $800 billion is the entire figure for all of defense spending.
Well,
and we're bankrupt. And didn't Osama bin Laden say, wouldn't it be great? Didn't he say this? Wouldn't it be great if the United States were to get involved militarily in Afghanistan so that we might bankrupt them the same way that the Russians were bankrupted? Is that not a statement that he made?
That is a statement that he made, and also even inside, Cloward and Piven, the famous political scientist on the left, said this is a way to bankrupt the country, is keep spending money that you don't have on welfare type of deal. So you always have a pincer movement if you want to put those two things together.
Yeah, no. Clearly, we've got it coming at us from all sides. Medicaid, Medicare, defense, and Social Security. I mean, let's just hang with the big four for a while. We need to go down the list. We need to keep going down the list, but just regarding those four, why?
Well, one of the things that has heartened me is that we are seeing a renewed interest in the Constitution. Now, coming out of the Tea Party movement, and having been a part of it almost since it started here in New Hampshire, we see the renewed interest in the Constitution and the enumerated powers thereof. And it was very heartening to see, even if it was nothing more than symbolic, or I would say with some of the Democrats reading it a little bit of a sneer, if I could go there, that they would even think of reading the Constitution in the beginning of the session. I thought that was
terrific.
Good news, and certainly I know that Frank Ginta, who was my congressman here in 1st Congressional District, took great delight in reading the Second Amendment. And I thought that was a good thing. My question to you is my favorite question of all: the proper role of government. We see government expanding.
Proper role of government, protecting us against individuals that would do us harm, whether that be physical harm or property damage, and protecting our country against foreign aggression.
Okay, I need you to expand that just a little bit. And let me put it in terms of this. Right now, the thing that scares me the most, Gary, when I think about the proper role of government, I look at the FCC, who wants to now regulate the internet, one of the best tools that a free democracy, a free people have ever had for communicating ideas. They said, we're going to regulate it. The court said no. They said, okay, we're still going to regulate it. Legislators all signed a strong reprimand saying, we never gave you that ability. We never gave you the legal authority to do that. And they've just regulated it as well. We look at the EPA, who has said, we're going to take the rule that you passed, the law that you passed, Congress, and we're going to change it on our own say-so that we can now go regulate basically most of the economy. We see Health and Human Services Secretary Sebelius saying, I don't like all of these health care raises that you're about to put into effect, insurance companies. They're unreasonable. You can't, and you see this the administrative state that the progressive movement has always wanted to put into place. If you were top dog, notice I didn't say the P word. If you were top dog, what would you be doing?
Well,
I mean, if somebody has said to me, Skip, if you were president, what would you do? And I've been able to run down a whole list of things. So, play the virtual scenario for me.
Well, how about dictator? How about becoming the dictator?
Emperor for a day.
Emperor for a day. I would balance the budget. I would capitate Medicaid and Medicare and do away with the mandates when it comes to the health care delivery for the poor and those over 65 to the states, effectively limiting the amount of money that we would spend in both of those areas that are most out of control. Abolish the Federal Department of Education along the same lines, give education back to the states. Currently, the Federal Department of Education gives states about 11 cents out of every dollar that they spend, but it comes with 16 cents worth of strings attached. So it's really a negative to take federal money, as it is in so many different areas. So getting the federal government out of the business of states, I think that's very constitutional. But the notion of 50 laboratories of innovation, all very competitive, all out to engage in a practice of best practices, where best practices would in fact get emulated, failures would get avoided. Looking at Social Security, making Social Security viable into the future. As I mentioned before, a combination of raising the retirement age, raising the amount of money subject to Social Security withholding, a reduction of benefit, not to the point that it's going to cause heartache beyond the heartache that we're already experiencing, and then perhaps some means testing regarding being able to collect Social Security. What is the amount of money that you're making, and what is it that you're going to be collecting from the government, if it's going to be viable going into the future. And defense. I think that we should embark on a strong national defense, that we should maintain a strong national defense, but that we cannot continue to nation build when we've put ourselves in a position, when we put ourselves in the state of bankruptcy to do that. We're going to be of no good to any country worldwide if we're bankrupt, and that's where we're at right now.
Okay. One of the reasons why we're running out of money is that obviously the economy has tanked. Jobs is on the lips of everybody.
So eliminate the corporate income tax. Eliminate
To zero?
To zero, yes.
Okay, I'm with you on that.
On bills that created regulation that, as a business person, I just felt were going to have unforeseen consequences, and those unforeseen consequences was raising the cost to do business.
How about some examples, some specific examples? Other than, you look at the reams of regulations that there are, do you have a list of specifically odorous ones that you would get rid of?
Well, when you look right now at the federal government, I mean, it's virtually an A to Z kind of a situation, whereby laws get passed that concerning the environment. We all want a clean environment, but as a result of passing those laws regarding any monies get distributed by the corporation go to the individuals that own the corporations. At that point, the money gets taxed. Eliminate corporate taxation, which is what corporations started out with, and we become the place to do business again. We become the only place to really do business, because now corporations can retain earnings if they so choose to invest and create jobs.
And what about the unseen tax that the federal government puts upon every single little business, no matter where it is? Regulatory. And we are seeing that almost every single department under the Obama administration...
The unforeseen circumstances of regulation.
Right.
Skip, as governor of New Mexico, I probably vetoed more bills than all the other governors in the country combined. And a lot of that was bills that created regulation that, as a business person, I just felt were going to have unforeseen consequences, and those unforeseen consequences was raising the cost to do business.
How about some examples, some specific examples? Other than, you look at the reams of regulations that there are, do you have a list of specifically odorous ones that you would get rid of?
Well, when you look right now at the federal government, I mean, it's virtually an A to Z kind of a situation, whereby laws get passed that concerning the environment. We all want a clean environment, but as a result of passing those laws regarding a clean environment, common sense kind of goes out the window that you should actually have to be talking about erecting a little mini fence so that turtles won't cross the road and get smashed. I'm not up for turtles being smashed, but that we should actually get into discussions or planning on how you might actually administer or build that little mini fence to prevent the turtles from crossing the road is an example of unintended consequences of Endangered Species Act.
Well, some of these things I understand, but I look at it as...
unintended consequences regarding Sarbanes-Oxley.
Oh, yes.
When Sarbanes-Oxley passed, one of the things that was contained within that was MarktoMarket Accounting. I personally lost a huge amount of money in Enron. And one of the causes of the Enron debacle, the main cause was just outright fraud, was the outright cause. But it was kind of perpetuated by the fact that the assets that they purchased were not being marked down to their actual value. They were actually marked up, enabling Enron to report record earnings and to continue to borrow from their sources of borrowing. With mark-to-market accounting, they were required to actually, with Sarbanes-Oxley and that legislation, everybody had to mark assets to just where they are all the time, which made all the sense in the world at the time. But during our latest meltdown here in 2008, arguably mark-to-market accounting is what exacerbated this last financial downturn, where in a multi-trillion-dollar market for mortgage-backed securities, there would have been one trade on one day for $180,000 at 7 cents on the dollar, that at that point required all financial institutions to mark those assets at 7 cents, as opposed to the dollar that they had them on the books for, returning 5 to 7%, even with the bad assets. So there is regulation with unintended consequence that ends up adversely affecting all of our lives.
Yeah, I could sit here and talk about some others as well, with the interference of one organization to the other. But the music is playing. Time for another break. Folks, we'll be right back.